巡迴世界各地演出嘅Watoto兒童合唱團，曾經喺美國白宮、英國白金漢宮演出，喺舞台上載歌載舞，一班天真爛漫嘅孩子，卻飽受過戰火、窮困折磨。佢哋生命改變嘅故事，由一個個願意回應上帝呼召嘅生命開始。
This is where I grew up. As long as I can remember, I've always had to work hard. It seems like I spent most of my time collecting water. I used to dream of one day falling in love, getting married, living in a big house and having lots of children. I even dreamed of being a doctor, helping people feel better, fixing them when they're sick. I'd lie awake at night with my sister. She would draw pictures on my back using her finger. I'd try and guess what she drew. One day she got sick. I loved her very much. I used to love to laugh. I used to love to feel the warm sun on my face. I used to love to walk through the tall grass, feeling it tickle my ankles. I used to be a young girl. You can call me Ruth.
I can remember where I was driving along, and God said to me, Gary, in this place you're going to shed blood, sweat, and tears, but if you're faithful to me, I'll be faithful to you. And I just remember seeing a massive thunderstorm coming in across the city, and it was just this feeling like, wow, this could be an incredible place, but it was so broken. And I just had this deep inner conviction that I was in the right place at the right time. This was where God wanted me. And a rainbow appeared out of that storm, and the end of the rainbow was from one side of the city over the other, and I felt at the foot of the rainbow there's a pot of gold, and I'm going to find that pot of gold in the heart of this city. I love Africa, lived here all of my life. My dad was a Canadian, but my mom was from England, and her parents came out to South Africa after the war, and then they met in Zimbabwe, where my grandparents were missionaries. My grandparents came out to Africa in 1936 to Kenya, and then moved down to Zimbabwe. So I'm 3 generations in Africa. My dad was 3 when he came to Africa, so very much an African. I was living a normal teenager's life, and you know, I used to go to parties and meet the girls. I came home one night after a party and my mom and dad I heard them. They didn't hear me come. And they were on their knees praying for me. Changed my life when I heard them praying for me. So.
I was born to pastors in Canada, Oshawa, Ontario, Canada, a very small community. And we kind of traveled around all over the place. We lived in about 5 different communities before I graduated from high school. From the earliest memories of my life, I've always known there was a God and that He's a miraculous God. Before Gary ever asked me if I would marry him, he asked me if I would be willing to be a missionary in Africa. I think from a very early age, he always had a call of God upon his life to come back to the country, the continent of his birth, and to invest his life there. And he knew that he needed a partner that would be willing to stick with him through it all.
Yeah, we went to Zambia, 1978, I think it was, and pastored 2 churches there, smaller churches, English churches, grew. Tough times. We had a couple of kids already, our eldest, Timothy, and Rachel, but our youngest was born in Zambia, so he's an African too. Hi, kids.
Hi.
Mama.
Can you see the V?
It was tough. Zambia was tough. It was tough because that was Marilyn's first trip to Africa. Zambia, in many ways, was not as tough as Uganda, but they were petty thieves, and we were broken into more times than we can remember. And it was while we were in Zambia that God very clearly said to me, Gary, Kampala, downtown English-speaking church. Over the years we've been in Africa, we've lost count of the number of times we've been broken into. And when I got to Uganda, they didn't come with lollipops, they came with machine guns. And I remember driving into Kampala the very first time, and it was a devastated city. It was a shell, it was a husk. It was destroyed. A lot of people, no shoes, not a lot of people on the streets, almost no vehicles on the streets. You would hear gunfire every night. That was the place we came to. We found a hotel that had a room that could seat about 200 people. It was called the Imperial Hotel, and the room that we rented was called the Crystal Suite. And I tell people it wasn't crystal, it wasn't sweet, and it wasn't imperial either.
And I remember my very first Sunday in church. Of course, the church was still small at that time. And after the service, Gary would stand and greet everybody. And I was one of the guys he greeted.
So I came on the day that the church was being launched to check them out, to find out. It was amazing. When I came and I heard the sermon, it was unbelievable. That was on the 22nd of April, 1984.
Time we were hitting the second year, the house was no longer able to take all of us. And that's when we began to pray, God, what do we do next?
Someone said, have you seen the center? And it used to be called Norman Cinema. It was a detention center for political prisoners, but it was the largest public auditorium in the country at the time, seat about 1,400 people. And so I went down, I said, let me go have a look at it. So I walked in with a side door, and it was broken. There was a single 100-watt light bulb. Out of the 1,400 seats, about 100 worked. They were the old kind you have to push down, and then they bang up afterwards when you got up. The theater screen was torn and broken.
We eventually found who owns the place. Then we eventually found who was running the place. And then we asked for a time that can we be able to have a meeting in that place.
We came, we cleaned it all up and we set it up. We enter this place, we are not going to leave.
We were having a service. We saw army soldiers, government soldiers marching, hundreds of them past the open doors outside. And we knew that it was now in earnest. And so we knew we had to leave. Close down the service, send everybody home. I had a Peugeot 504 French car, and I'd painted a Canadian flag on the side. I said to Marilyn, we're not stopping. If they stop us, just put your head down, we're going. And I acted like I was the Canadian ambassador when they When they tried to stop me, I just saluted and they stopped and saluted back, and we got home and we had 3 days of war.
I was left in this building, and guess what happened? While we were here, the soldiers came and surrounded the place.
They actually came to blow up that building, and my pastor, who's my right-hand man, Christopher, he was our first caretaker. He was in the building, and they came to because they knew the soldiers were there. He waved out a flag.
That white flag was actually my white towel.
End of the story is that all the soldiers were in that building. Government soldiers fled for their lives, leaving us as the squatters in the building, and we've never left.